Everybody, this is really exciting. September, we're all back at it. This is good. Friendly faces out in the audience. Love it. And I want to thank Girl Geeks for inviting me to speak tonight. This is awesome. What a great opportunity. When Caroline Wharton and I were going back and forth to figure out what the topic could be, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I hadn't seen a lot written about, try something a little new. And what I came up with was this understanding client dynamics. And that comes out of the situation where we've all walked out of a meeting and you go, what the heck just happened in there, right? And early on in my career, when I was just starting out, my boss would take me to meetings, we'd get in the car, and he'd say, okay, so here's who we're gonna meet, here's what they care about, blah, blah, blah. We'd go to the meeting, and then when it was done, we'd get back in the car, and I go, what the heck just happened in there? And he would explain it to me, and I was like, oh, okay, this is good. And the longer I was in the business, and 19 years, hard to believe, I noticed now most of the time I would spend with my team mentoring and coaching them would be them coming to my office and going, Morag, what just happened in there? So I thought, okay, I'm not seeing a lot of this written about, so let's talk about that. So for those of you starting out, I hope there's a lot here for you to chew on. For those of you that have been doing this for quite a while, I hope you can identify with this, and if nothing else, it'll give you a starting point, right, for those conversations with your team members when they come to you with that question. And if there's stuff that I haven't touched on, you go, well, what about this? Then that's just great, because I want to know, because I'm still working on this as a theory. So why are we talking about it? Why does it matter? I believe that understanding your clients and developing an empathy for them and what they're trying to achieve is really important for us as designers to create not only great user experiences, but great business outcomes, right? Your alternative is you come out of that meeting, you don't understand what happened, and you go, well, fine. I'm just going to create like my wireframes and my project plan, and we'll get through it. And you get it done, you might hit the project objectives, but you're not really making a difference, right? And you want to make a difference. For those of you who are not in-house, maybe you're working what we used to call on client side for a vendor, you're working agency side, developing that rapport, understanding your clients better is going to generate repeat business. All right. So tonight I'm going to go briefly through an approach, talk about project context at the table in meetings. So I'll go through this pretty quickly, and then we'll spend most of, I guess, 40 minutes. That takes me to about 5-2, talking about what I'm calling a client persona. Okay, and for those of you in the UX world, UX research world, personas have a very specific meaning. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to get there. Okay. All right. Great intro. Just a little bit. These are titles I've had, industries I've worked in. A little bit about me. What this doesn't show is I used to be an economic consultant before all this started. So not everyone has a straight line, right, through their UX career. What it also doesn't show is that for most of these roles, with the exception of the independent IA and business analyst, I was the first person in that company to have that job, right? So when you're doing that, it's really exciting because you get to create your own job description, but at the same time, and you get to hire. I love hiring. You're also spending a lot of time developing buy-in from the people around you and a lot of swimming upstream, right? There's no two ways around it. The other thing it doesn't show here is that as of the end of July, I quit my job, and I'm now spending time creating a new path, and who knows where that's going to go, but it will probably involve some swimming upstream, possibly a different stream, but we'll see. I'm pretty excited. Okay, basic approach. Been doing this for consulting for over 20 years. But it's anecdotal. This is not hard research based. This is anecdotal, but it's a lot of experience. I'm going to say also it's a no judgment zone, right? So I'm going through presenting my observations, my analysis, things that I would do in that situation. You may not choose to handle it the same way. That's cool, whatever. So no judgment, draw your own conclusions on how you would want to react in that situation to develop more business or develop the rapport with your client. And finally, some minimal cynicism and bitterness. I will say, after doing this for over 20 years, there's only 2 clients that I've ever worked with that I would cross the street to avoid. And they were both bullies. And I have no time for that. But that said, we all need to let it out. We need to let off steam. Highly recommend the oatmeal. This project, as you can guess, does not end well. There's blinking kittens on a website. Dilbert is always good for letting off steam. We've all had the urge to slap someone at some point during the month. And finally, there are all kinds of variations on shit clients say, okay? So just kind of let it out. Everyone kind of, breathe, and now we'll get into it. Okay. As designers, we're taught from the outset that we are not users. We think differently. We have a different process. We have a different relationship to the product, and overall a different mental model, right, of how the product is going to work than our end customer. Also important to recognize, designers are not clients, right? We are fundamentally different from the rest of the people on the project team in, I would say, 2 different ways. And I'm a UX designer, I have to say that. I know there's people who aren't UX designers. Hear this, how I feel. Designers aren't clients. We're different. We're makers. We're creators. And one of the big ways that we're different is that we are intrinsically motivated, right? We just want to do good work. We want to create great experiences. We want to do things that are interesting and that are valuable, right? Other people involved in projects, they got to make money for their business by whatever means necessary. They want to advance in their careers. Not that we don't, but this could be, a stronger driver for them. They're looking to move in their career. They're looking for power. They might be looking for prestige. There's a whole bunch of things that come into play, right? Also, the thing about designers is we're really good at synthesizing things. We're really good at synthesizing ideas, taking stuff where you kind of put it together and you go, wow. And for us to go, well, yeah, duh, right? This is what we do. But for other people who aren't synthesizers, who aren't creators, they have no idea how you got there. So it's really important to spend time with your clients explaining that path and helping them understand how you got there. All right. So context, project context, token iceberg. As designers, that's what we see. We see that little tip. We're creating the user experience. What we're less aware of and less concerned about is looking at that user experience in the overall context of the project. And the project isn't always just, a website, a marketing experience. It's, technical support 24/7. It's operationalizing it. It's running the CMS. It's getting customer care up to speed. It's aligning it with all the offline campaigns. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, right? We see a small part. And then you look at, well, there's an annual project portfolio that this one project is part of, right? So what's the rest of that portfolio look like, and where are you on that list, right? Why that project portfolio? What's the company doing in terms of their objectives for this year? And finally, what's the environment in which they're operating? What changes are going on? It's a lot. And you go, how can I be expected to know all this? Really good shortcut. Get the company's annual report online. Read the president or the CEO's message. That'll usually be about a page. Those are so carefully crafted to get right down to the nugget of what they want the market and their customers to know about what they're doing. So I find it's a really good encapsulation of what's going on. All right, this is my one token. Cheesy animation. Okay, so before a project starts, all this stuff goes on, right? You bid on the contract, you're awarded the contract, you form your team, and then everyone gets in a room, you hope, and you have this kickoff meeting. But you got to ask, like, all along the way here, there were triggers, right? So why does this project exist, right? Why were you picked? Do you know why you were picked? And why this team? Why your team? Why the client team? Why are those people there, right? You're going to be working with each other over a good period of time, so this becomes important. So why does a project exist? You guys can read that. I will say there was one project we worked on where we were designing an app for a fairly obscure operating system. We had no time to do it. Did it really quickly in-house. For the most part, got external vendor to build it. And the sole purpose of doing that was that we wanted a competing operating system company to look at it and go, oh, you did an app for that OS? Well, we want you to do an app for our OS. And we knew that they had funding and that they would probably pay for us to do it, right? Because we wanted to be on that platform. We didn't have it budgeted that year, right? So it was finding ways, how do we spend a little to get this big return that had nothing to do with customer satisfaction, market penetration, profit, any of the rest of it, right? So that kind of stuff happens. Why did you get it? I think we did. Yes. Yay. Yes. So it worked. It worked. Thank you. Why were you picked? Right. Your reputation as an agency or an outside vendor is going to get you on the short list. It's never going to get you the job because there are a lot of good agencies out there. So unless you've got some kind of other in, that reputation is going to get you on the list. When I was looking for vendors to put on lists, I would also put vendors on the list that I knew would be a good complement to the internal team that they were working with, whether it was my team or whether it was the product team. So if I had a product team that had a really amazing process and were willing to go way outside the box, I would find a vendor who was good at that and would work with them, right? For other people who really didn't know much about the project process, I would get them a vendor with a really strong project management team and doing something fairly kind of traditional, because this is what they could handle and this is what would lead to overall success. Looking at the account team, what did your account team promise them? You know, we all love that moment. And did they send in your really slick pitch team, right? And then you guys come in, you got to execute. You're not the slick pitch team. That's always fun. Your proposal. Why did they like your proposal, right? Was it your budget? Awesome, but it's going to be a hard time getting change requests if the scope changes. They like your people. Did you actually name your people? It's great if you can actually name your people. I used to love that. Was it your timeline? Did they have crazy timelines? And you said, yep, we can do that. Well, you better hit that timeline, right? You don't have a lot of room to budge there. And finally, process. As designers, our whole soul is sometimes based on our process and how we do it and the rigor around the research and the development of the idea and the design crits and everything. For the most part, your clients don't care. They don't understand it. That kind of scares them because it's really foreign to them, and they look at it and they go, okay, this is just going to take time. Do we really need to do this, right? So remember that you're invested in your process and you know, stay true to it, but your clients aren't. All right, and finally the client team. Did you get the A team? All right, have you got the people with the right skills, the right connections, the right availability to get it done in the timeline that things need to happen? If you didn't get the A team, why not? Nothing wrong with that. Could just mean the A team was doing something that had a higher priority. It happens, right? Other times, maybe the company doesn't realize how big this is, right? Did they underestimate the impact of this project on their business, so they haven't assigned their best people? And finally, also equally valid, someone's asked for more responsibility. I used to do this with my team all the time. You push them in when they're not quite ready to do something and let them grow. But they got to grow, and as an overall project team, you have to help them with that growth. All right. At the table. Look at how many women there are at that table. That's awesome. Okay. So really quick on this. There's lots of stuff you can read about it. First of all, be present, right? I don't mean like physically, but also mentally. Be present, be prepared, be ready to participate. If you get there and you're more worried about what you're going to say or what you're going to do than what's actually happening in the meeting, don't do that again. Next time, be ready so you can be there. Because oftentimes, I've worked on projects where we get everyone together for the big kickoff meeting, and then you're all working by phone, right? So that first time, it's going to be possibly one of the few times you're actually going to meet and see people face to face and see how they interact with each other in a room. Listen to people's titles. Listen to the introductions. Small, subtle things about introductions. If it's a VP, do they even bother to tell you they're a VP, or do they just go, I'm product development, and I support my team? Do they lead their team? Do they run their team? Do they support their team? Like, all that stuff gives you a bit of a sense about the culture. It's not always particularly helpful, but it's often amusing. Where are people sitting? There's a whole sidebar on how people set up around a meeting table. You'll have the person running it at the head. You often have the person who wants to be the running it at the other end of the table. Watch for that. Participants all around, and then the eccentrics, people who have different points of view, will be at the corners. So I just mentioned that. That's just kind of fun. Next time you're in a meeting, watch for this. And anyway, that's just fun. What are they doing? Are they on their phone, or are they on their laptop? Are they paying attention? Are they writing in a notebook? What are they doing? Who's doing most of the talking? And how are people responding to that, right? Are they listening carefully? Are they rolling their eyes? What's going on? And RACI, okay, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. Know who the person is who is actually accountable for delivering the results, right? You need them on board, accountable person on board the most. If they just need to be kept informed, don't spend a lot of time trying to, just keep them informed. Anyway, project managers, account managers, live this stuff, learn from them. Client personas. Any guess? I think I have time. Any guess as to what's going on in this picture? This is from an actual meeting, okay? There's your person leading the meeting, the guy standing up, covering his mouth. My EQ's not that good. I can't tell if he's unsure.
I think it looks like the guy that's looking at the computer is trying to answer a question, and he doesn't have the answer, and everybody's waiting.
So yeah, it kind of looks like the guy sitting at the computer is waiting to talk. I thought maybe the woman next to him was talking, and maybe they were looking at her. I was trying to decide what the dynamic was there. The guy in the corner looks a little eccentric in that context, right? He looks like one of us, but he looks a little eccentric in that context. Do you have a question or? It says Jeff Daniels and Marley Matlin. That's the first time I've been able to read this. This will be posted later. You can follow it. It's people talking about a production of Cyrano de Bergerac performed in American Sign Language. So anyway, that guy in the laptop is a sound engineer, as it turns out. Anyway, so they have more pictures of them down below. But you can, everyone's been in that meeting. Okay, so let's get into talking about client personas. This is my way of thinking about client personas. It's a theory right now. What I'm trying to do is group personas by what I'm calling their discoverable traits into groups. If anyone's got a research bent and can help with this, I'd love to make it a little more rigorous. But three main categories for client persona characteristics. One is their personal investment in the process. That's key, right? If someone's not personally invested in the success of this project, it's going to make it quite difficult. Secondly, how well are they able to contribute to the success of this project in the context of the business, right? That's also pretty important. And finally, and this is kind of icing on the cake, if they can contribute to the design, right? That's why the designer's there, that's why the design team is there, but if they can contribute to the design, awesome. All right, so for each of these, this is my personal investment quadrant analysis. Corporate versus personal objectives, right? We'll have stated corporate objectives, and but there'll be personal objectives as well. All is combined. Your golden moment is when someone is being compensated based on achieving that corporate objective. That's gold, right? On the other end, if someone's got this personal objective kind of over here that doesn't align with what the project's doing, keep your eyes open. And then what I've called vulnerability, open or closed. Closed is the important one here. Those are the people in the project who you know, and so we're all guilty of it at some point, where they don't want to look stupid, right? They're not going to open their mouth because they don't want to look stupid. It's tricky to deal with. On the other end are the people who are open to going, I don't know, tell me, help me, design this for me, right? That's what you're good at, right? So those are the people I want to work with. In that top quadrant are your optimally productive project contributors. 10 years ago now, I worked on a project with AOL.com and Kayak.com, creating this pinpoint travel experience. Were you at Blast then? Yeah, when we did that. And got to work with this guy, Paul English, who is the founder of Kayak.com. He's getting computers to Africa. He just started a VC, and he teaches at MIT Sloan School of Management. Awesome. I would put him in that quadrant, right? He was amazing to work with. For the ones that are working corporate objective, but they don't want to look stupid, right? Just help them look good. If they say something that's not, they talk about, I don't know, page clicks or web hits or something like that, go, that's, really love that idea. We're going to increase your page views, and we're going to encourage more people to, stay on the site longer and click through, which will, reduce people leaving and therefore reduce your bounce rate. So, find kind of corny but subtle moments to make them look good and help educate them at the same time. This one's rare. People who are open to sharing, but have some intensely personal motivations here. I don't know. They might take credit for the project when it's done. I kind of struggle with this one. It comes up more in a different context. And finally, if they've got really strong personal motivations and they're closed, don't do anything in public. They're really, really pretty wired as it is. So if you have a moment where you can talk to them behind the scenes, so say, hey, what can we, how can we make this work for you? That's the way to do that one. And I'd also invite you, as we're going through this, think about maybe a project you're working on now and go, where am I on this quadrant, right? As designers, we often run the risk of ending up in that highly personal space. We have really, really high standards for design, and we want it to be pixel perfect. And the client just wants it out the door, right? And you want it to be perfect. So you can put yourself, and you're an open person to deal with, I know this. So you kind of put yourself in that weird quadrant down there. So just be aware. All right, next. Business versus digital business. On the vertical here, we have someone who's an expert in their core competency. Could be customer support, finance, technology, whatever. They're an expert. The other end, someone who's learning the ropes. Fair enough. On the right, on the horizontal axis, I've got digitally savvy, and by this I mean digitally business savvy, okay? Not that they have a Pinterest account, not that they use Snapchat, right? They actually have run a digital business. They know what it takes, okay? Versus, again, someone learning the ropes. Best thing, those people knows that top quadrant. They're going to give you great business requirements. They know how to get this stuff done. They probably know what they need. They know how to make it work, right? Great opportunity to learn from people like that. They're an expert in their core competency, but they're learning the ropes. Educate as best you can, right? Digitally savvy, but learning the ropes in the business, you kind of go, well, what's going on there? That's probably someone who has just joined the company, perhaps, but they were brought in because of their digital expertise. It's one option. In that case, they can be a really useful ally for you. You can find ways to work with them to help them, if they're new to the company, learn more about the company, because they can be your bridge in, because they probably get digital business more than the rest of the people there. Be careful, though, when that you're not putting too much focus on them because they know the digital business. If they don't know the other part of the business, you're going to tick them off because you're just paying attention to the people who speak your language rather than pushing into what's important for the rest of the business. And finally, if they're learning the ropes all around, why are they there? Like, holy cow. And again, tread carefully. Always when you're dealing in the red, tread carefully. Just find out why they're there. If for some reason they are a key project member, I don't know, there's something else going on. Otherwise, work around them. Worst case, have them taken off the project if they're holding you back. And again, this is why we love project managers and account managers to help us with that kind of stuff. Finally, looking at design experience versus the type of involvement in the project. This one gets a little more complex. If they have a lot of experience with design process, software development process, and specifically your software development process, whether you're doing agile, iterative, waterfall, whatever, awesome, that's great. There'll be people who may never worked on a software project before. It happens, we know it happens. The other horizontal axis there I have, are you doing a project of team augmentation, or has this been completely outsourced? All right. Up in that top right, they could have an internal user experience design team. It happens. I used to do it all the time. I used to outsource work for various reasons. Oh, I forgot something really important. I'm going to go back. Oops. Okay, this one. I forgot my example here. This one, top left, about 5 years ago, working on a media website. And this was before apps were really taking off. Maybe it was slightly longer than that. And working with someone in media who was like top of his game, near the top of the pecking order, really knew his medium. We needed him to contribute to the website. He was approving everything, right? And he had it stuck in his mind that in order to generate all the page views and the time on site that he needed, that he had to keep games. He had like online golfing games and stuff on this news website, right? So really knew his own core competency, digital, not so much. So we spent a lot of time doing persona development work, walking him through scenarios to get him to the point where he recognized that, oh yeah, I don't need one long visit. Given the nature of the content that we produce, we can get someone coming back 3-4 times a day just to check in on the weather, on the traffic, sports, news, all that type of stuff. We can get them to come back on a regular basis. And back to table dynamics, there was a wonderful moment where we were taking him through the web analytics, and you could see them go from this to this, and they were literally leaning forward. It's awesome. The other thing I want to say on this, again, as a designer, where are you, right? I had people come into interviews, again, when I was working in media, awesome UX designers, but they say, well, this is great, but I don't want to show people ads. Users don't want to look at ads. And you go, you're in a media company here, right? This is before they weren't really exploring much else. So don't shoot yourself in the foot. Know a little bit about the companies before you go talk to them. All right, so I'm back here. Internal UX design team, yes. Okay. If they have a lot of design process experience, learn from it. They know how to make things work in their context. Brilliant. The risk there, especially in a team augmentation environment, they know how it's worked once, twice, right? They have a set way They know how to avoid all the risks. If you can help push them a bit out of their comfort zone and maybe think about things a little differently, that can be a real value to bring to the project. If it's completely outsourced, are they threatened with the fact that all this work has gone out of house, or are they grateful that you've shown up, right? If it's completely outsourced, they don't know anything about it. They could be looking for a partner, long-term partner, awesome opportunity. If you're augmenting their team, they could be looking to learn from you. We had projects when Windows 8 was launched. We brought in a company to help us understand Metro UI. And at first it was like, do we want to do this ourselves? Are we going to learn from them? We ended up using them as a long-term partner. And finally, here's your red box here. If they don't know what's going on, make sure you've got a really, really strong project management framework. It sounds obvious, but I remember one of my team coming into my office, and then this was after I jumped into one of their meetings. I didn't go to them all the time. And we were looking at wireframes, and the product owner was going, oh, okay, well, we could do that. But if we go this way instead, will that still work? And he was talking about some really fundamental business requirements. I'm like, holy cow, we're almost through wireframes and you haven't nailed your business requirements? So when I talked with my team about it after, my team member, it's like, well, you know, everyone's getting along so well. I don't want to say anything. And like, dude, like you're going to drive your vendor into change requests. You're going to up the budget. We're going to have a delay at some point, right? So if not now, when? So that's where you need that really strong project management presence to keep that going. So my example for this, again, another media example. They're the easiest because they're kind of furthest away in my mind. Huge site. And we needed to move it off one CMS onto another content management system. And all different kinds of information, different types of data, a lot of different ways that you could present the information and need a lot of templates. It was right when responsive design was starting, so whole other level, and it's media, right? So you got to serve ads responsively. Whole other level of complexity. Internally, the powers that be didn't quite get it, how much effort was going to be. So my boss said to me, he goes, we're outsourcing the UX work. I'm like, what? Like, this is huge. This is like one of our flagship brands, and we're going to outsource this? He's like, yep. Because we don't have the political buy-in yet to get the budget we need. And the odds of this project going south are really, really high. Do you want to be on the hook, or can we put it to a vendor, right? And the other part of putting it to a vendor is there's often situations where a vendor can tell you that this is going to take a long time and be really expensive, where you don't trust it from your in-house team. It just happens, right? So then I got to tell my team, guess what? We're not doing this. We'll have one person who'll be that between the vendor and the UX team and provide UX approvals, but you guys don't get to do it. Really sorry about that. We worked with a vendor who we had previously agreed was a partner. They were our first go-to. I called them up last minute and said, hey, guess what? You're going to love this project. I really want you guys to work on it, because we had to start it tomorrow or something, right? And we learned they'd done a little responsive, so we learned a little from them. The person I put in that role as the UX go-between was really, really strong creative, but had less experience on the UX side. So also great opportunity for them to up their game. All right. And yes, it ended up in CRs, and yes, it launched a long time after that, and it took quite a while to agree on a CMS, and all the things that we thought were going to happen kind of came to pass. So I think in the end, we were glad we took the position we did. All right, so this is all done. Ended up with this real range of personas, right? At one end, there's the perfect client, right? They're working to corporate objectives, they're open, they trust you, they want to be a partner, they're wonderful. At the other end, they've got a personal agenda going on. They don't know what they're doing. They're not willing to tell you that they don't know what they're doing. And they're really like have a fixed way of thinking. I'm happy to say that right side, I saw a lot more 15 years ago when the internet was new to everyone, right? Personal objectives especially, because the website would be so low down on the priority list that you could put your own personal objectives on it. Now I'm seeing a lot more on the left. As clients, we've all become a lot more professional, more rigorous in our approach to getting things done. I see a lot more of this. And it really does come down to that really personal basis of why that person's at the table to what kind of result you're going to get. So that's it. In conclusion, 3 things, right? Develop empathy for your clients, try and understand where they're coming from, why they're there, what's driving them. Communicate with your own team after meetings. Do that debrief. Have that what the heck happened in their moment. Get it off your chest. And then go, okay, so what do we think happened? Do we have a hypothesis? Do we think this might be going on? How can we check, right? And finally, set boundaries, right? That's your project management framework. Know, how far you can reach, how far they can reach. And this is really, it's all playground stuff, right? You want to play nicely with others. This is all a big part of it. And that's it. Keep track if you're interested at my Twitter handle there. I'm going to turn this into a blog. There's so much that I want to stay and follow up on it. So yes, keep track. Thank you. Any good questions? Okay.
We're actually going to open up the floor up to questions. Who's got questions? Come on, everybody.
No, come on.
Don't make me stand in silence.
Comments?
Comments, questions? Yes, Michelle?
One thing you didn't mention, and I think anybody who runs a business or who's an independent consultant or even does work on the side is about asking for money. And when you run into money issues around, like you mentioned change requests quite frequently, but what about when clients, UX is often a new thing for clients? Sorry, it's turning into a long question. UX can be a new thing for people, and they have no idea how to value it. So then when you give them a price, they may be uncomfortable with it, or they may ask for, or they can't understand. So being on both sides of the table, what advice would you give to people around money?
Wow. I'm happy to say that by the time I left Rogers, they understood UX, so I haven't had to deal with it recently. And they'd say, when are you doing research? When's the research starting? So they'd be, what, do you want us to do research? That's awesome. But earlier on, it's tough. I think, and one of the things I didn't touch on there at all is the project's going to have objectives. Are they measurable, right? And if they're measurable, being able to tie your UX process and the outcomes of that to that gives you some leverage, right? If you're showing a higher completion rate through a sales funnel, that type of thing, citing the Amazon examples, all that kind of stuff. It's a tough one. I don't have a good answer for you on the asking for money because I haven't had to deal with it. I'm gonna have to deal with it again, aren't I? That's awesome. Let me get back to you on that, Michelle.
Hi.
Hi.
On one of your cross charts there, you had mentioned about people being good at what their core, in addition to something else. And so in overlap, I find I've always had subjective opinions towards, as an account manager, let's just say, who may have had some history in design.
Awesome.
Do you want to lend So like if you're the one speaking with the client, does the designer want to hear, I was thinking they might be interpreting it this way, or I've been more so told by like a boss, stand back, let them know kind of just ABC, but any creative challenge is solely up to the designer. So I found it unique to hear that kind of having a blend was nice when life can often dictate you're supposed to specialize now. So I wonder kind of what your opinion is on that.
It's part of that boundaries discussion. If I would try and create a project environment and a team environment where everyone has an opinion. Some people's opinion are more valid than others. You should be heard. If it's disregarded, I wouldn't take it personally. But I think it's up to the designer to then say, okay, so let's take that design thing you're seeing, can we make this about a business problem instead? Can we see how you're relating this design thing back to the business problem, which is more your role in this? So, and more taking it to an extreme, you get, clients who will come into meetings and say, oh, I think, we need this really big red button right here, and it's got to do this, right? And so they're giving you design direction. We love that, right? So I think it's up to the designer to say, so tell me why. Why do you think it needs to be big and red? Red might be a brand color, might not. They go, well, we really need it to grab attention. Why do you need it to grab attention? So you take them through that 5 whys process to get to the point where maybe you're getting to the real underlying question. But if the roles have been handed out and it is a very specialized team, it's big enough to have a really specialized team, I would say let the designers be the designers. Chime in. They can listen or not. So, yeah.
And it's always it. Like sometimes you find that I'm getting that look from the mic. Sometimes you find that you have to sell your idea because they might want that big red button, but it's like no, that's not going to work, and this is why, and these are our recommendations. So, do you find it challenging when? Oh
yeah, that's like, fun.
No, I really want that red button.
On that case, I would say pick your battles, right? You're probably not going to win all of them. If it's 3 pages in, 5 pages in on some side page, listen carefully, honor their intent, and it may happen that it doesn't become a red button by the time it gets to production. I'm just saying. That's the passive-aggressive way to deal with it, I will admit. But if it's on the homepage, then it really is beholden on you to get into, fight. No, don't fight, but, get a little scrappy about it and say, so why? Why? Oh, you want it to be really visible. Well, here's something that fits with your brand guidelines. Here's something that fits with what we've planned for the rest of the site. Does this meet your objective, right? If you're working with someone who's going to be like, it's red because it has to be red, I don't even think I had one of those on there. What would that be? Closed and doesn't know design. Yeah, you're kind of toast. Yeah.
The same people that say make the logo bigger, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes. Okay. First, I'll take down here, and then we'll come up.
Hey, Christine.
Hi, Morag. I used to work for Morag, by the way, so I know some of this. I sort of am thinking, oh my God, where did I fit on that corner? And that's what I'm. Right. Morag, can you bring up the
maybe
iceberg slide?
Oh, okay. That's going to take a little bit. Sure.
Okay. My question about the iceberg slide.
This is why you don't include these.
Great. And
there. Okay.
One of the challenges as a project or product sponsor, product development, product manager, is for me is sometimes how do you communicate the bottom part of the iceberg up to the user experience team. Because there are constraints, right? You're going to have financial, operational, economic, social constraints, all sorts of things that are going to come up that need to get fed up to the top of the iceberg.
Right.
What are some strategies for getting the team really copacetic on understanding that and being able to use it?
Can they be phrased in the form of a business requirement? Would that work? Can be.
Can be, and they
Can
should
be.
be.
And they should be.
Sometimes they don't quite make it all the time in that level of detail, but what about things like, what are some strategies for getting people in the room the right way? Certain business requirements are great, but again, I think they need to be there, they need to be on paper, they need to be fully documented, but a lot of agile development really means you don't get to do that. Nobody wants it, and a post-it note on a board isn't necessarily going to communicate that.
Haven't tried it. If it's going to fundamentally affect the success of your product, get it on the post-it note on the board, right? Again, it's all about picking your battles and prioritizing stuff. But if it's that critical, if you're doing iterative or waterfall, you'll have a beautifully documented set of business requirements. Agile, not so much. Can you create a story around it? Is there a story? Can you tie it in to a story?
Yeah, stories are good. Stories are good.
Yeah.
What about meetings? I mean, some of the, when I think about, wanting to tell the story about the product, why is the product there? Why does the business want it?
That is a great topic for your kickoff meeting.
Yeah.
What better time than when you have everyone in the room, fresh and new, to present it with one voice, have the discussion happen there.
Right. So make sure all the right people are in the kickoff meeting, even those UX people that are doing it, not just the UX manager.
Yeah, I would say, every project I've been on, the whole team at some point will say, why wasn't I there at the beginning of the project to hear that, right? So for that first meeting, get everybody in the room. And then, again, love those project managers to say, okay, so now we're going to break out. We're going to have these people involved in this. We're going to have these people involved in this. We're going to break out and do this. But for this first meeting, it's really important that we get you all on board and you really understand what we're trying to achieve. So I think you answered your own question. That's great. Love this.
Thanks, sir. There was a question at the back too, but I don't know if I'll reach up. Yeah.
I'm pretty loud.
All right.
All right. So one thing that I'm finding is still a little bit of almost like a mystery type of box is the whole aspect of accessibility design. I'm wondering, have you had any issues in selling that through from a client perspective? And also, do you have any examples of where it's either gone really terrible or just really, really right?
No examples. Most of my last 2 years at Rogers was very, very little website development. It was all apps on any platform you could think of. But I know there's a legislative requirement. Legislative requirements kind of trump everything, right? If there's a big fine waiting for you at the end of the year.
There isn't yet. The CRTC still hasn't.
Really?
No, closed captioning is still not a requirement. Scripted video
Okay.
required. If that's the accessibility you're talking about.
But broadcasters
No.
are mandating on their own.
They are on their own, yes. I'm saying that CRTC still hasn't mandated.
But for website accessibility, there's certain, that's the one that comes into play this year. So yes, legislative with a big fine. If the people who are creating that annual project portfolio don't know about that legislation, please let them know, right? Don't let them find out. That's all I've got. Does anyone else know of accessibility projects that have gone really well, badly, tanked?
Hi. At the last company that I worked at, I actually was asked to do an accessibility audit, and at that time I didn't know how to do it, and there was no one to talk to about it. So I mean, I can speak to like the positive aspects of it, where like yes, it was pushed on us because of the legislation, but also because in the spirit of it, it's like people understand that, you know what, accessibility isn't just accessibility for the access challenged, it's more,
Right.
it's for everybody. So, you know, if you're able to speak to like your project leader with like all the right reasons to get through the project, then it'll go well. The issues that can happen is if the team sees the project as a start and a finish project. It's never a start and a finish. Anything on the web is always ongoing and always continuously changing. So, like as the site adapts, the team has to make sure that they have to adapt with it. Otherwise, that's how you end up with downfalls.
Right. Okay, thanks, Jen.
Does that answer your question?
Okay.
I've had a couple of projects that went pretty south, but I think, again, previous roles, but it's also been because it wasn't even thought about
Yeah.
upfront. So to go back and do an audit, I can only imagine the super fun stuff that you probably found. But thank you very much. That was awesome.
Okay.
Also, for anybody else who is interested in more accessibility, Accessibility Camp is happening this weekend. Matthew, remind me of the location.
University of Toronto.
U of T? All right, there you go. So yes, if you're interested, a couple days. OCAD, OCAD. Adam's got it. All right.
That other acronym.
And live streamed by Matthew. All right, Henry, you had a question? It was covered?
Okay.
All right, and Heather, you had one. Oh, there you go, there you go.
That's
All right.
great. The wisdom of the crowd. Love it.
Any other questions? Good, Crispin.
Do you have any advice for what to do when you go home after a really brutal day where the client was just the client from hell, and you just want to forget about what happened, but you know you have to go in tomorrow and have a good attitude? Mantras.
Wow. What do you drink? I like wine.
Yeah, that's what I usually do.
No, don't drink. Don't drink. Bad, bad. Yeah. I walk a lot. I don't know, exercise, all those things, whatever you do to get back to your happy place. Cookies, milk, big blankie, you know. Like I said early on, there's been 2 people I've worked with over my whole career that I would cross the street because they were bullies, and I just don't have time for that. But everyone else, it's like, you know, it'll pass. It's not, what did my boss used to say? It's not rocket surgery, right? We're not curing cancer, most of us. I'm sure those of you who work in medical, different thing, but most of us aren't curing cancer. So let it go, and it's about the project. It's not about you. Most of the big part of this is like 99% of this, it's not about you, right? So it's my big word for the night. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's hard to separate that sometimes because
Yeah.
it's easy to take things personally, especially when you pitch ideas and it's not like they're necessarily shooting you down. It's just that idea isn't going to work for that project. So, but yeah, sometimes it's hard to make that disconnect between the two.
That's a good point.
Anyone else? Anyone? Yes.
Hi, I just had a question. So I do mostly freelancing for, you know, small businesses, and a lot of the time they don't have. A lot of the time I'm working for people who like barely know how to use the internet, kind of thing.
We're all plotting them on the graph now. Yep. Okay.
In those kind of situations, what do you think are really key things to have in a strong project management like plan in order to, I guess, rein in like some is that I'm answering this as a UX professional, not a project manager. Okay? I did.
I would say take the time to walk them through the project plan. Like draw out the steps. You've done this a while. You know where they're going to go off the rails, right? And it's probably the number of revisions to your design, is my guess, right? So just make it clear if your proposal includes this many revisions, here's why, here's what's going to happen if we go over, right? This is what it means to go over. Here's what I'm going to say, you went over. If you change one color, no, like sometimes you have to get that granular. Those are horrible conversations to get into, but sometimes you have to into that, just get into that.
Yeah, because I do find that's, I guess, the struggle of working with people who don't necessarily understand. Yeah, like you were saying with the red button. Like,
Yeah.
I want the red button is like, well, they don't have design experience. They don't have any, like, IT experience. They don't understand how to use the internet very well. Like, how do you manage the
And they don't want to admit that they
expectations?
don't know what they don't
Yeah, exactly,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a tough call. And we used to say, your work is never better than your client, right? So people still say that. You heard that phrase? No? But, okay, it was just me. But yeah, sometimes it's hard to do work that's better than your client. So part of your job is to help make your client as good as they can be. And other times you'll get to the end of the day and you're like, I am so done. And there will come a point where you'll just, and these are the worst projects. We've all had a couple of these. You don't want them, but you get to that point where you just cross your arms and you go, you want a red button? Fine, there's your red button. Yeah, we're launching Tuesday, thanks. Take my check, and off I go. But, no one wants to do this. The whole point of this is try to get to a place where we don't have to.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hey, David.
Reposition myself here.
Hey, Morag.
Hey, David.
I have a question about how does the body of knowledge of good design evolve and grow?
Oh,
Are
gosh.
there research studies out there that combine designers with behavioral scientists, psychologists? I've been reading
Yes.
stories of new virtual reality technologies being used to treat medical patients for the pain of therapy and surgery. So how does a designer work together with a researcher and then a game developer all combine to make good design for this VR thing to help patients? How does that work?
Wow. I've never done that. I think that's a great topic for another talk. Get someone in who's done that. But stuff just makes its way through the community. Betsy and I were at a talk from Donald Norman back in the spring. He was at the Rotman School, and he's assembling a group of people to explore new ideas, right? There are these think tanks out there that explore new ideas, publish papers, people pick up on the ideas, find ways to apply them, right? But yeah, I don't know this, but like Mars, I think would be the one place I'd look to connect applied work with research. But I think it's a great topic for another talk. Sorry. Yep. Cool. Hi.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to ask you to put on your UX hat,
Okay.
as long as it's nice and tight now. Perfect. With someone mentioned accessibility earlier, which we now absolutely know is a very important part of UX.
Yep.
And another growing area of importance, which is totally part of UX, I feel as well, is web performance.
You mean
with
by that, do you mean speed?
Yeah.
Response? Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Real
Speed overall.
responsiveness.
I mean, not
Okay.
not specifically responsive, but just
Yep.
performance. And that's just been dictated by behavior. People are on their phones all the time.
Mhm.
Now, with that being said, as a UX professional, and I'm sure some budding UX professionals here, would you not recommend to any UX professional to pick up, or at least understand code?
Code. Interesting. I sense an agenda.
He drops the mic and goes. Morag, you're on.
I sense an agenda. Never hurts. Never hurts. Adam's shaking his head.
It never hurts. My background's as a developer.
Yeah,
So
that was mine. I haven't looked at code in a long time, but you should be conversant in the concepts, if nothing else. If only because it's really hard to be in a room with developers and try and, like, we just speak different languages, right? And we get kind of annoyed when they get into our space and tell us what we should do. So I think it's it's on us to learn their language so we can come into their space and learn how to code, learn the basics of it. But I think even more valuable is developing a rapport with your technical team, right? I'm going to take it back to the personal level, is get to know your developers so that they are comfortable sitting down with you and going, hey, I've got this great idea. Everyone knows the Instagram. I love this example about Instagram, right? When you say, yeah, I'm thinking about uploading my picture, and you go, I'm going to upload this photo. When you start typing in the description, Instagram's already uploading your photo, right? So by the time you hit, I'm going to send it, it's already up there, right? They've already taken your photo and uploaded it in anticipation, right? And if you cancel, they'll just discard it at some point. But it feels like you've had this instant experience where your photo was uploaded instantly. So it feels really fast. It's not a UX thing per se, but it answers a UX question. And I think you're only going to get those types of solutions if you have a good rapport with your tech team. You're not chucking something over the wall and going, build to this, right? So I think that's even more important, and understanding the language is a big part of it.
Actually,
Hey.
I have a very interesting background, so I understand. I'm a project manager by profession, but my background's in design, so I understand that side of things too. I support my team that does web development, so I understand that side too. So what I can probably add to the point that you guys are trying to make, and I think this is an important one, is that to build on the understanding that you need to work with the people and you need to speak the same lingo. It's also understanding about the limitation. So if the designers, because I see this all the time, and my team would work with the UX designers, they would often pitch an idea and then they would look at the feasibility from a technology standpoint, whether that can be implemented and whether they cannot be implemented. And it's important for both sides to understand each other and to understand the limitation from a design perspective as well from a technology perspective. And then you will be acting as a bridge. And that way, certain compromises may need to be made. You can't make certain things, if it's not feasible. But maybe but at least you learn from this and you will probably work around those kind of limitations. And with limitations come creativity, right? Designs don't come, design exists to work with the context, to work with these kind of parameters. So it's important to work with those sides. So I would definitely encourage people to learn code, yes, and to understand and try to understand the development side. And more importantly, understand why they are not seeing, if they see the same design, what do they interpret? Are they interpreting, can that be done? Or is it the logic that doesn't make sense? Or is it the flow that doesn't make sense? Whatever it is, have that dialogue. That's where that synergy will come from. That's all.
That's great.
Sorry, I'll just add to that too, another layer, and not to scare you too much. But the other reason that it's important to learn code now, I think, is we're moving towards interaction design as well, and like a static wireframe just isn't cutting it anymore. And moving to high fidelity wireframes or actual functional prototypes. And if you're the one who's concepting that and can actually output that functional prototype, it can't hurt you in any way.
Prototypes are awesome.
But it's also challenging if you're not one of the developers to keep up with the code because it's constantly changing with that. Like I haven't coded anything for a year, and for me to jump in, it's like, oh my God, I have to feel like I want to go straight back to the drawing board. So yeah, it's a challenge if you're not a dev to be able to keep up with the technologies. Definitely knowing what the capabilities were. Who was it? Lucy, did you have a question?
I'm just going to. Sorry, I was just going to extend on the comment. One of the challenges, though, and I have experienced this, where you've got a great functional prototype, and the stakeholders think that it's done because it works, it looks great. Why can't you just be? What do you mean you need another 8 weeks to finish this? So, yeah, coding I think is important, and functional prototypes are great, which sort of goes back to one of the original early questions about, how do you get money from a client? I think the term UX, there's lots of different phrases around it, right? You're not just going to do UX, you're going to do a functional prototype, you're going to do, action designs, not static mocks, so that they can really see what's going on. So I think there's a lot of cool phrases you can wrap around it to kind of add to the budget.
Sure. Yeah, when I was leaving, we just started digging into how do you do a really good functional prototype that doesn't look like the final product, right? It's got to look a little rough, and you're like, oh, I don't want to make it look rough, but you got to make it look a little kind of off so that you emphasize that gap. It's crazy. It's crazy. Challenge. I sense a challenge. How do I make them sob? Okay.
Hey. Okay, so I'm actually pretty fascinated about titles. So you call yourself user experience designer, and you know what? If we break it up,
user experience
there's
leader,
user experience, and then there's designer, which in my mind it's like two separate things, right? So I mean, like if you put yourself into like the mindset of just designer, that's like this little box. So whereas I know in user experience, like people come from like all sorts of fields, right? You can come from psychology. There's like all sorts of different directions that people come from. Mm-hmm. When you walk into a room, like I guess like that meeting room, how do you set the expectation of where you are, and how where do you see yourself?
I'll take myself out of it because I don't do much in the way of design. Very little, in fact. I'm more on the strategy side and getting the teams together. If you have influence over how people are introduced, this is just helpful anyway, it's better to take some time to say, can you tell us your name and why you're here, right? What are you doing on the project? What's your role on this project? So at that point you can clarify, I'm a UX designer, I'm doing a requirements through functional prototype, or functional prototype and visual and interaction design, however you want to phrase it to put, God, anyone's applied for a job as a UX designer. There's so many variations on what people actually want when they hire that. So I think that's your best way of getting your point across about what you're doing and why you're there. Okay.
And also jumping back with that, like introing in the room and saying, yes, get face to face. So have everyone in the room for the first time. But how often should you be bringing back the entire team? Because it's not feasible to do that all the time, especially if it's remote.
Yeah. I don't know.
But what do you do?
What do you do?
Or how often? Is there a guideline? Is it depending on the size team?
I'm picturing... Those of you from Rogers, I'm picturing Tamara Anthony going, what would Tamara say? The first meeting's great. I think the whole team in the room, you might not ever need to do it again until you get to launch and you're trying to celebrate and you're going, hey guys, look who did this. Isn't this awesome? Otherwise you can do breakouts. If things start going off the rails and there's phone calls where people are just being really nasty on the phone, get them back in the room. It's harder to be nasty to someone to their face than over the phone. But I put that back to your project managers. That's something they need to stay well on top of.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Yeah, it's easier to discuss in person than over the phone, even, or definitely over the email. Because
it's like the email flame wars. As soon as you're going, oh yeah, back and
well,
forth,
do this.
pick up the phone, just yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Oh.
Hi there. Are there any themes to what clients are asking for these days?
You guys would have to tell me. Gosh, I was deep in the heart of corporate Rogers, right? We were doing a lot of apps, a lot of cross-platform apps. I'm loving the movement to this integrated customer experience where it's web and app and apps on multiple platforms, in-store, right? So really looking at all customer touch points. I hope that's where it's going, but it's a great discussion question for cocktails after however we end these meetings.
I think the simple answer too is like just good UX. They're all asked like, I don't know, just good. Yes, up top.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's been great.
Great.
So I know that you mentioned that your team, before you left Rogers, were talking about how valuable interactive prototypes were for you. Can you tell me a little bit about the ROI on those and how I can convince my team that they're a good idea?
Sure. So the question was, how valuable are interactive prototypes over flat wireframes? For context, it was my boss, my VP, that came to me and said, we need to hire a full-time prototyper. And the reason for that, and she's here, Betsy, say hi to Betsy. The reason, and no, you can't have her. And the reason for that is, you think of traditional 4 steps. We used to present our work 4 times to the senior execs. One at a concept stage where they kind of went, okay, whatever. And then we'd show them wireframes, we'd show them mocks, and then we'd show them just before it went into production, with the idea being no surprises. So at the beginning, we'd tell them about the concept, and they're like, okay, fine. We'd show them wireframes and flows, and you could see them going, okay, now I get the business process, right? I understand what's going on there. So those are key. But it wasn't until they got the prototype and actually had to start using it that you could see that penny drop, right? So the real, and for us, before we had those prototypes, they wouldn't really see that till we were right at launch, which is a scary time for your senior execs to look at something and go, oh, that's what that means, right? So the sooner you can show them that, and as best they can, to put themselves in the customer's shoes and to see how it plays through. I don't know what the time savings was, but I would guess you're saving in change requests, launch delays, you're accelerating your timeline, right? So all that stuff, when you're looking at a traditional waterfall or iterative, the sooner you catch the step, you save sort of like 10 times the effort. I think you're pushing all that work right up to the front, so you're saving a heck of a lot of rework. And only you'd know what that is for your company. Okay.
Anyone else? All right, more. Oh, wait. Oh, yes, David.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. All the way through. Save effort from QA team back. Okay.
Good. All right, Morag Johnston, everyone.